Good morning, everybody. This is Bobby Persinger with Prevention Action Alliance, and we're just going to wait a few more minutes for a couple more registrants to sign in, and then we'll get started with the webinar.
You examining your relationships with each other. But to do that, you have to get people from all different directions. Prevention Action Alliance is lumped in saying, hey, you're going to do that. Let's add, because they're paying, let's add alcohol and other drugs to it. So it's not just your relationship with each other. Now it's also how do you address a chronic problem in all of our communities, especially in Ohio, with
Good morning again, and welcome to the OCTA webinar. My name is Bobby Persinger, and I'm here with Prevention Action Alliance. We're going to wait a few more seconds, but we are going to unmute everybody for introductions. So please be prepared to introduce yourselves and what university you're with. We'll probably get started in about 60 seconds. Thanks.
Author,
stuff, and the witnesses said they were dark red or brown. Yeah, which would have been light purple-ish in pictures.
Again, good morning, everyone. This is Bobby Persinger. I'm the director of the Ohio College Initiative here at Prevention Action Alliance. And we are going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. We have the majority of registrants on the call, but we are having a little bit of technical difficulty with some folks. So we're not going to be able to unmute people. So the webinar will be saved and posted on our YouTube channel for review later, or to go back and if you want to remember something that Dr. Gavazzi says. But I think what I'm going to do is just introduce Dr. Stephen Gavazzi. He is the lead on this OCTA assessment process through his efforts and initiatives. And I'll let him further introduce himself and proceed with the webinar. Take it away, Dr. Gavazzi.
All right. Well, thank you, Bobby, and thanks to everyone who is with us. And I apologize on behalf of both myself and Bobby for not being able to hear you. Normally and typically, we like to have an engaged discussion with these kinds of webinars. Bobby, I'm also getting a strange echo. And I don't know if you had pushed something, but it's up and now it's gone. So
Okay,
hopefully that'll take care of it. So anyway, on to the show. So what we want to do in a very short amount of time is talk about the optimal college town assessment and how it can help your colleges and municipalities with some of the issues that you may be grappling with at present. This is the third round of data collection that has been sponsored by the Prevention Action Alliance. In the first round, we had Miami University of Ohio and Otterbein in Westerville, Ohio, and also Cleveland State take part in that first data collection. And we learned a lot as a result of that. In the second round, we then added in Ohio University. And actually, Ohio University had used the Optimal College Town Assessment one previous time, but they had not used the student partying items that we had developed in partnership with the Prevention Action Alliance. And so they wanted to do the OCTA a second time, and also had the University of Cincinnati on board. So we're looking for up to 5 partners, and I understand that we have a few campus and community partners that have already signed on. And so we hope to convince the rest of you to sign up and to take advantage of the fact that the Prevention Action Alliance has completely underwritten all of these efforts. So without any further ado, Bobby, if we would go to the conceptual model so that we can just talk a little bit about what the Optimal College Town Assessment is all about.
Did it show up?
I'm not seeing it on my screen. I see still the front slide. Oh, there it is. So this is the typology of town-gown relationships that I co-developed with Michael Fox, who has written his own book on campus community relationships. He's a geographer from Mount Allison University, which is in New Brunswick in Canada, and also Jeff Martin, who until recently was a senior vice president at Clemson University. He's actually now retired, and enjoying a second career working on a leadership program for Converse College, which is in North Carolina. So this typology really in many ways mimics an older model that we have used in the marriage and family therapy literature to talk about the quality of relationships. And if you're looking at the top right-hand portion of the screen, you see what's called a harmonious relationship. And that harmonious relationship is meant to connote those relationships that are really ideal. And they're built on the fact that both partners, again, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a campus community relationship, are putting in a lot of effort. Both partners are putting in a lot of effort, and the effort that they're creating, the effort that they're undertaking has created a lot of comfort or satisfaction. On the complete opposite end, so that would be the lower left-hand quadrant, you see what we call the devitalized relationship. This is where there's low effort and low comfort. Now, one of the differences between a marriage and a campus community relationship is that in a campus community relationship, you can't get a divorce. So, but this is the next worst thing, I imagine, or next best thing, depending on your view of that, to getting a divorce. This is where campuses and communities are really bereft of one another. They have very little to do with each other in the way of activities, and there's very little trust, very little comfort in that relationship. And then in the middle, you get these two different relationships, which are suboptimal. One is certainly better than the other. The lower right-hand quadrant is the conflicted relationship. That's where you're putting a lot of effort. Again, whether you're in a marriage or in a campus community relationship, you're putting a lot of effort in, but that effort isn't resulting in comfort. It's really resulting in a lot of friction and conflict. And then on the other side, you get what is known as a traditional relationship, and that's the combination of lower effort but relatively high comfort. In a matter of course, it's not at all clear to me that there are many marriages that fit this traditional model anymore, where kind of the one spouse and the other are off doing their own things, and yet they maintain some degree of comfort. It's certainly very unusual to see this kind of relationship in a campus community and that's because of the two big problems that usually result from the campus and the community coming to some sort of coming at odds to one another. And that's, first of all, land use, and we won't spend a whole lot of time talking about that. But the second is student misbehavior. And that student misbehavior really often as not is the result of underage alcohol consumption. And so that's really why we've decided to focus so heavily on that. So in a nutshell, before we leave this slide, you want to be up in the upper right-hand quadrant. And part of what we want to do is we want to help you to measure how well you're actually doing at this point in time. And of course, these relationships actually change over time as well. So Bobby, if we could go to the next slide. So here is just a reminder to all of you that this is a web-based tool that we have developed. And so there will be a URL that we will create that's unique to each of the projects that are undertaken. Some of the other things that are distinct advantages, because this is a web-based tool, is that you have real-time data tracking. And so what that means is exactly what it says. As soon as a respondent pushes the submit button on a survey, you have instantaneous access to that survey data. And so that obviously builds over time. And we have a built-in reporting tool, so that saves you all of the time of having to compile all of this information. The information is aggregated for you, and it's put in some actually really nice pie charts and bar graphs for your use. The other thing that I want to also say is that the data is considered co-owned. And so the Optimal College Town Assessment has been using these data, the database, to create a growing understanding of comparisons that people can make in terms of how they look in comparison to other campuses and communities that have used this tool. And by the way, there have been about 30 different campuses and communities at this time that have used various different portions of the tool. So you get the comparison, but also you get your own data. And so we'll never identify the data specific to any one campus or community in any of the work that we do, but you have the ability to do that. And we download that in whatever form you would like, whether it's an Excel sheet or if you use one of the software packages for statistical analysis like SAS or SPSS, whatever it is that you use, we will provide that data to you. And because, of course, we're working with the Prevention Action Alliance, part of what we will do with all of the campuses and communities who participate in this is we are actually going to be doing some further analyses for you beyond what you get in the built-in reporting tool, because this will be part of our ongoing work that we will be doing with all of the campuses and communities that decide to participate in this. Okay, let's move on then, Bobby. This is an example, this is a screenshot of what the Optimal College Town Assessment looks like. There are 16 items that everybody will use that sits at the front end of the Optimal College Town Assessment. And this is the way that we assess both the comfort and the effort that campus and community partners are putting into this relationship. The respondents will choose at the beginning of the survey to basically tell the tool whether or not they are answering these questions as a member of the campus or as a member of the community. And we will work with all of you to create a front-end email as well as any kind of print materials that you would like to use that will inform people about what it is that you are looking to have them do. And so just as a, for instance, a common question that comes up is, well, I'm a member of campus, I'm a faculty member, but I also live in the community. What should I do? And that's a site-by-site decision that people can make. In many cases, what most campuses and communities have chosen to do with that is to ask the campus representatives, if they are members of the campus, to only report as a member of campus. However, we have had a few instances where people have asked people who are both to actually go back in and fill out the survey a second time. But these are local decisions that can be made. Back to the screenshot for a second. You see this is just one example of contact. This is an effort question, and this is a question that's being asked of community members about the contact that they have with the following groups of students. And so you see, groups of campus representatives. So you see students mentioned, faculty, staff and administration, and also governing board members. Also notice that there's a progress bar, and so this will alert people to how much further they will have to go in terms of the survey. For all participants, we will create a menu of all of the different items beyond the first 16 that are available to you. And of course, because this is a project that is underwritten by the Prevention Action Alliance, we will be asking you to use all of the student partying items, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. But we also have a whole range of other scales that have been developed, and that ranges from issues regarding public safety, how local media treat campuses and communities, the effect of local businesses near campus and the utilization of those businesses, and so on. And so, again, participants, once they sign on, will actually get a menu that you will choose from in terms of the additional items that you'll want to use. And we've built all of these, and so they will be items that we will put onto the site for you that will be specific to each of your projects. Okay, Bobby, if we could go to the next slide. I shouldn't have wasted our time with this. I'm sorry, Bobby, if you could just go further. I already talked about the real-time piece of this. But I think what the next slide will show us is what that looks like as an overview. This happens to be what Clemson's data collection looked like when they did this. You see on the left-hand side, it tells you how many people have completed it at the moment at which you were looking at the screen, and also how many incomplete instances there are. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see how it just tracks over time how people are actually submitting their surveys. So you see in this case, Clemson had over 600 participants who, in the first day that the survey was open, participated. You see how it drops down, and then a reminder went out on or about September 20th, and it jumped up, and then it went down, and then 1/3 and final reminder went out to the campus and community. And you see that that last big blast up, where from September 26th through the 28th, they got another spike of over 400 people who participated. Ideally, this is a good point in time to say, ideally, we look for a minimum of 100 participants from both the campus and another 100 from the community to make this data really work for you. In Clemson's case, and in many other cases, and many other large universities we've worked with, they've actually had almost 2,000 campus representatives because they've used a lot of students. They've invited students in, and students, of course, are very important to the process of understanding, especially the student partying component of all this, but campus-community relationships in general. And Clemson actually had almost 650 residents who also participated, which in a small town like Clemson, which is less than 20,000 people, that was actually quite a heroic feat for them to get that many residents to participate. Okay, so next slide, please, Bobby.
Dr. Grazi, we have a really great question, actually, if you don't mind,
Sure.
related to this information. The question is, does the survey have controls to ensure that there are no duplicate entries?
Yes, excellent question. So only one IP address can be used to fill out the survey. So what that means is we can't totally prevent someone from using numerous sites if they really wanted to cream the data. There's no way for us to be able to see that, but they can't use their device more than once to fill out the survey.
And there is a follow-up to that question that says, we have 3 different campuses and 3 different communities. Can we filter data to see the difference between the campuses?
Yes, so that creates a strategy, that creates a question about strategy here. So one of the things that we can do is that we can create different URLs for each of the different campuses, and then that keeps it clean. Or alternatively, if it's, and I'm assuming this is 3 campuses in 3 different locations, so I probably don't have to say the second part, but in the event that there were multiple campuses on one location, we might want to consider creating one more URL that talks about the common community. So in other words, we would send campus people, campus representatives to 2 different URLs, but we would send the community members to one site. I'll use an example to make this crystal clear. So when we were in Pennsylvania doing data gathering last year, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania had 2 universities on one site, and that was Moravian College and Lehigh University. And so we did exactly that. We created a URL for Lehigh, we created a URL for Moravian, and then we created a third one for the city of Bethlehem, so that the community could respond as one, but the campus representatives responded as 2 different campuses. The other way, by the way, depending on zip code, we always collect zip code information up front on where people live and where they work. And so we can also use that information to further divide out the data. I hope that answered that question adequately.
If you're ready, I can move
And
on.
Bobby, if that was enough, then we want to go to the next slide anyway.
Okay.
So here are the items that are related to student partying. Now these are the buckets that we have for these items. So there are actually many more items inside of each of these buckets. But so we're looking at 4 different buckets of items to assess student partying. The first, which is as it says here, trouble caused at various places that students use to party. So here, what we're doing is we're looking at the geography of where people are partying. And so we're talking about how problematic are things in residence halls versus off-campus dwellings versus in local restaurants and bars, etc. So that's our way of locating where the partying is happening and being able to discriminate more and less. The second piece is the rank ordering of what we call the wildest night. And so what we want to gather here are perceptions from both the campus and the community about which are the more problematic nights of the week. And we've actually come up with some interesting surprises with regards to different locations, because unknown to campus representatives and unknown to community representatives, sometimes there's very different viewpoints about some of the quote-unquote off nights. You can imagine, of course, that the wildest nights tend to be Friday and Saturday, but there are some surprising variations across these different campuses and communities about what else is happening beyond the normal and typical student partying night. The third bucket has to do with the extent of problems, and so these are exactly what you would imagine. We're assessing how much noise is a problem, how much trash is a problem, how much public urination is a problem, and so on, the kinds of things that you would imagine to be associated with problematic student behavior. And then finally, there are two questions that ask about the individual participants' perceptions about the degree to which student partying is having a negative impact on the overall campus-community relationship, and then also the degree to which people are aware of the financial strain that places on campus-community relationships as well. And again, that's the sum total of the student partying items that we have been developing in partnership with the Prevention Action Alliance. But however, these items have also now been used extensively in Pennsylvania as well. And so the database that we have on student partying has been growing pretty impressively. And we have over 5,000 responses from both campus and community representatives about these issues as well. Okay, so next slide, please, Bobby. This is one of the last major slides that we have to talk about today. And this simply points out the fact that we see data collection as part of a much larger process of mobilizing a campus and a community. And so you see how the data gathering sits in the middle of two actions that need to be taken on the front end, and two actions or sets of activities that need to be taken after the data is collected. So the first part is this awareness raising. This is, for some campuses and communities, this is not really that important because they may have a standing campus community or town council that has been actively involved over years of work in highlighting the importance of campus-community relationships. But however, even in those instances, we've seen where the need to get the word out about the importance of the survey still becomes an important part of this process. However, for others, and we have a great story to tell about what happened with Otterbein, they did not have any sort of campus-community relationship prior to this data collection. And so a big part of their initial effort was to pull together people who represented the campus and community who could help guide and direct the project itself. And so the term that they now use is Otterville, which is a great combination of Otterbein and Westerville to talk about how well they've actually come together as a result of this project. The second part is the coalition building, and while it sounds in some ways like the awareness building or the awareness raising, the coalition building is, at the end of the day, who are going to be your partners to get the word out about the survey. And so I'll use the example. I used to be the dean and director of the Ohio State Mansfield campus, and we were the first group to actually use this tool. And we had three main coalition partners because there were three main activities in the community that we knew we wanted to have well represented in terms of our database. We had a teacher prep program, so we wanted a lot of involvement from local school districts because we were sending our student teachers out to teach there. We also had a very active bachelor and master's of social work program, and so we wanted to have all of the nonprofit agencies extensively involved. And third and finally, we had a very large and well-endowed business and industry internship program, where we were literally paying our students to go out and to work in paid internships in local business communities. And so we wanted to get the business community involved, and so we had the Chamber of Commerce and the local economic group, the economic development group, as major coalition partners, as well as the school superintendents and the United Way to help us with the nonprofit agencies. So then the data gathering takes place that normally and typically takes place between a 2 and 4 week period. That can be either lengthened or shortened depending on the needs and interests of different sites. We can keep that open fairly long period of time. And then, of course, once you have the data, what do you do with it? I've already explained in the interpreting information part, you have the ability immediately to use the reports that we have built. So there's no problem at all in terms of using that data, but you want to start to think about, well, how are you going to use that data? And of course, you also have the comparison tool. You will be able to compare yourselves against the other communities in both Ohio and Pennsylvania that have used the tool to date. And so that's another part and parcel of this interpreting information. But then how do you roll this out? And different organizations do things in different ways. We've seen people use town halls, both on the campus and in the community. We've seen people use focus groups to gather further information about people's interpretation. And hopefully then all of this leads to the final piece, which is the evidence-based action. And again, in cooperation with the Prevention Action Alliance, Bobby and I will be helping you to create those evidence-based action plans. And we have some templates that you will be able to use to do that. And so we'll be working very closely with you on that as well. So that's really the mobilization cycle. And then the ideal would be that somewhere down the road, we would retest. So we would do the survey again, and we would have everyone then be able to compare their results to the results from last time. So Bobby, I think that may be everything in terms of the last thing, right. So what have we seen in terms of the prevention planning itself as a result of what we've done over the past 2 data collections? First, again, obviously, as I've already indicated, with regards to what happened with Otterbein in Westerville, it can either build or strengthen the campus community coalitions prior to launching the survey. We know that it also creates very important baseline data from the standpoint of understanding where are the problems, but also where are the strengths in the campus community relationship. And so you get really a lot of information about both. And then ultimately, we hope that it also sharpens the focus on where you want to act. So just again, as a for instance, when we did this data collection in Mansfield, we saw that some of our best relationships were with the business community. And so we knew that we had a real strength in terms of going forward. But we also were really puzzled by the fact that the local educators were not at all happy with many of the things that we were doing. And so we really made part of our action plan finding out more information about that and how we could really begin to resolve that issue. And without boring people with the details, when we did our second data collection, we saw that we had some dramatic improvement as a result of the actions that we took. Bobby, any other questions at this point in time, or anything else that we need to do? I know that we're at the end, and probably at the end of our time too, or close to it.
We are coming up on the end of our time frame. If there is any questions remaining for Dr. Gavazzi, please feel free to submit them. Otherwise, if something comes up, next week, or you think about something later, you can easily email me, and I can make sure that Dr. Gavazzi gets your question, and I'll get you his answer.
Excellent. And Bobby, can we tell them anything at all right now about due dates, deadlines, et cetera, in terms of what we're expecting from potential participants?
As far as the process, once December 1st is the deadline to apply for interested parties. Once that happens, we'll send out next steps at that point that would then further define check-in points and the deadline. We typically like to announce all of the data at our May annual meeting. So we'll have everything hopefully wrapped up by then. But I'll be able to send out some very detailed information once we get past the initial application deadline.
Excellent.
And Dr. Gavazzi, somebody did ask for your autograph, so you might have to fulfill that. You might have to fulfill that request when we do the data day.
Yeah, it comes with the package.
Another question just popped up. When do we find out if we are selected? There are 5 open slots for the process. Right now, we have 4 interested parties, including those who are on the call. So I'm not gonna. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but everybody who is expressing interest is probably going to be selected. Are there any other questions for Dr. Gavazi or for myself? Seeing none, again, thank you all for joining the call and for expressing your commitment not only to this process, the OCTA process, but also to the larger issues that Dr. Gavazi touched on, and really helping promote prevention across your campuses and throughout your larger communities. Again, if you have any questions between now and the next time we talk, please don't hesitate to email me, and I will make sure that you have everything you need.
Thanks so much for hosting this, Bobby.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for participating.